The thing that I want people to understand from something that we have walked through and we have experienced firsthand is that when God is leading you somewhere or when God is leading you to do something, a lot of times it does not make sense in the moment. And there are times throughout the process where you want to turn around and go backwards into something that's comfortable. But if you do that, you will completely miss where God is trying to take you and what he's trying to do. And I feel like I get to share that story a lot in more public settings, but you don't get to share that a lot, like from a stage or with a microphone.
Yeah.
And I think people need to hear your side of it because your side of it is just as significant. And it was probably a little more surprising from your perspective because you weren't the one that was going back to school.
Right.
So how did it all happen for you? And I think to frame it, last night when we were talking to the Browns, that was one of the first times I'd heard you share it to like a group of friends or to other people while I was sitting there. But the first few months after we moved here,
yeah.
I don't think people understand that part of the story. Those first few months that we moved here.
Yep.
What was it like?
Okay. Well, I want to talk about something else before I say what it was like when we moved here because, for me the process of getting here is different.
Okay.
So you felt like you were supposed to go back to school and finish your degree at ORU, which at first we thought we were going to do online only, because we had Noah, who was 2.5, almost 3, and Harvest, who was like 6 months old. And so we were like, okay, the plan is to do ORU online in the fall of 21, which is what we did. But leading up to that, unbeknownst to me, you had been praying and feeling like we needed to live in Tulsa so you could go to school in person. I did not know that is what you were praying. And we hadn't really had very many conversations, if any. You would just like randomly throw out Tulsa. I'd be like, hey, what would you think if we lived in Tulsa one day? And it was just kind of like, no, I don't want to be there. And it didn't make sense to me. And so, which I don't really know why it never clicked. Anyways.
Probably because I wasn't being direct about it.
No, you weren't being very direct about it at all. You were just kind of like, throw it out there randomly. But basically every time I was just like, no, I don't want to live there. Like our life is here. Church is here. Family's down the street. And so, I was like on my own, just going through a season with the Lord of just like laying things down and like just honestly a lot of pruning and the Lord kind of refining like my yes. And so just if I give him my yes in the small things, I felt like he was preparing me for a yes to something more. And at the time I didn't know that was Tulsa. But anyways, going through this season on my own of this stuff, kids are at their ages, whatever. We go on a family trip in October with my family to, was it Kansas City?
Kansas City.
To Kansas City. On our way back, like literally within 30 minutes of getting back to our house, which, rewind, I think we had maybe talked about Tulsa on the way down.
Wait, on the way back home?
On the way to the vacation.
Did we?
Trip.
I don't remember that.
I remember, I felt like we did. Yeah. And actually, I need to rewind even more. I skipped something pretty important. Rewind. Middle of the summer, I had a dream. We'd been back in our house. Like, we renovated it right before Harvest was born.
So what month was this?
So this is probably like June or July.
Okay.
I don't remember. I mean, it was like somewhere in the middle of the summer. We'd only been back in our like freshly renovated house for like 6 months. Mm-hmm. So yeah, this dream was crazy. I had a dream that I was in our living room surrounded by moving boxes. And in the dream, I was crying. And I asked the Lord, I was like, Lord, why are you having us move? And in my dream, he responded to me and said, it's necessary. And I woke up, told you that dream, and you're like, don't you think that's about Tulsa? And I was like, no, it can't be. I was like, not at all. Why would that be about Tulsa? So anyways, I had this dream, full denial, just absolutely like heels in the ground. This is not Tulsa. So now fast forward again. Our trip, we're on the way home. We're in the car. I'm driving. And I all of a sudden had this like, I don't know. It was like the Lord just like met me in the car and just made everything clear and was like, hey, that dream's about Tulsa. I'm moving your family there. I need your yes. This is what's happening. Like just all this stuff. And I was like processing. I don't know if you remember, I was processing with you out loud.
I remember.
As I'm realizing all these things, like tears streaming down my face, trying not to like wreck the car. Having this encounter with the Lord. By the time we pull into our driveway, we're pulling into our driveway back home. I remember we looked at each other and we were like, this is crazy. We're like, so I guess we're moving to Tulsa.
Yeah.
So we got our house. We got our friend who's a realtor to get our house on the market. We got our house on the market. We sold it within a month. Found a place here really fast, and then by December 31st, we were here. So from middle-ish end of October to December 31st, it was like very quick transition. Left my church, our church, but my church of 15 years that I essentially grew up in. Was leaving the comfort of living 5 minutes from my parents and just all of our friends and relationships that we had. And I remember having just this really intense fear of being lonely and just believing the lie that we were going to be lonely. I was going to be lonely. Our family was going to be lonely because we didn't have our family. We didn't have a church home. We didn't know anybody. Mm-hmm. And so the first few weeks of living here, you basically start, I would think you were home for a week before school actually started.
Yeah, I think I started school like January 8th or something like that.
Yeah, and so it was really quick after we moved.
Yeah, I was gone. Like, it was every day.
Every day, Monday through Friday.
Just like work hours, essentially.
Yes. Yeah, so you were gone every single day. I was home alone with the kids.
And the difference is because it's easy for an outside person to not fully understand. We knew no one here.
Yeah, no one.
No one.
Yeah.
So the difference between living here and in Oklahoma City or Edmond is you've got friends in Edmond. Your family's in Edmond. And so there's a lot more to do because you know everyone. Yeah.
And we knew some people. Like I have some family that lives in Glenpool, cousins, but like our immediate family, none of our immediate family was close by at all. Mm-hmm. And yeah, we had zero friends.
So what was going through your head every day?
Oh, it was terrible. I became like, and I say this lightly, kind of. No, I don't say this lightly. That's what I'm trying to say. Because I've experienced like real depression before. And so I'm not saying this is something that it wasn't. But I was really struggling and feeling borderline like depressed. And just so lonely, just fighting loneliness because you would leave. It was so cold outside. So it's not like I could like take the kids to a park because it's like January in Oklahoma. We don't know anyone. We don't have a home church yet. We just had a short list of places we wanted to try. And we were doing church online because like it was so rough. And so I just remember like there's days where I just remember laying on the couch watching the kids play and I just felt so like just so like disconnected and so just lonely. It just felt lonely. I just felt like, man, this is hard, and I don't want to just call my mom every single day and just cry to her every day. Like that's a lot. Another thing I was thinking about with our first month here, and this was kind of a selfish thought, I think, but still a struggle nonetheless, because it was felt so isolated. I just remember kind of like fighting this feeling of like, okay, God, you brought us here. You told us to move here. And Jordan's got ORU. Mm-hmm. But I feel like I am just here. And I feel like I'm just kind of like suffering through it. And I would like to think that you have more for me in this and our kids too. And I just remember thinking, like, really fighting that and feeling guilty for thinking about it like that too, because, you know, ultimately wanted to support what God was doing in you with finishing your degree. But also at the same time, it just felt like, what is the purpose here for me and the kids? And so that was a little bit of a struggle. I really just felt like I was praying through that constantly and having to really trust the Lord that if he called our family here, that he had a plan and a purpose for our family. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't just you, although it was wonderful what he was doing in you and through you at ORU. I just had to believe, that there was a very specific plan and purpose for our family, that he wouldn't just call us so that, you know, the rest of us were going to be lonely and isolated and sad. Like, I just felt like there was more than that. And so I don't know if this, trying to, like, for the people listening, give them this picture, because I felt like I was in this mental battle, like, every single day of, like, I feel super lonely and isolated, but I also know God is really good and he called us here and he has a plan. And, but man, this is really hard and this really sucks. And me being the extrovert I am, especially, it was like anytime you would tell me about adult conversations you were having at school, I was like, oh, I just want to talk to another adult. I need a friend. But then on the other side, it was like, okay, God, we said yes. And I know we said yes because you have something for our family here, right? We didn't want to just be stagnant and comfortable back home. So this is like my battle every single day was like, really, which is like, you think about scripture, like, we war not against flesh and blood. And it was just this like spiritual battle every day of like feeling like the enemy was just trying to like feed me all these lies of like loneliness and like, there's nothing for you here. Yeah. Like,
because for us to look back, hindsight's 2020, and for people in our lives right now, they're like, oh, well, you're Elizabeth, you have a bunch of friends. But like, I think it's really important to really zero in on that 1 month or 2 months or whatever it was, because in your head, there was a big question mark of, what if I don't make any friends? What if there is nothing at all and this is the rest of my life?
Yeah.
So,
which feels like, I know some people will hear that and think that is so dramatic.
Yeah, but you don't know when you're in it.
Yeah, because it just feels heavy. And so, yeah, that was it. It was just this everyday kind of like fight of, I know God has so much more for us and that he is really strengthening our faith right now, but this feels like it sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a huge like test of faith and trust in the Lord, and just like trusting that he like had our family, like in every sense, not just like friendships, but like that there was something here that he had purposed us to do. Yeah, because for a while, which I don't know if a lot of people know this, but for a while we didn't think we were going to be living in Tulsa. for like long term.
Yeah.
We, for a good while, thought that we were just going to come here, you were going to finish your degree, and then we were going to make our way back to Edmond.
Yeah, and the way our old pastor announced it to our church was, they're just leaving for a little while.
Yeah.
They'll be back. And like, we legitimately thought that and believed that.
Yes.
But the thing is, like, you just, like, I wish I could go back and like just know that you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And you would think moving to a brand new city that you would naturally be thinking that, but we were legitimately thinking this is going to be a quick 1.5 to 2 years,
Yes.
and then we'll be back.
I mean, that's what we told family too. We were like, listen, we're just devoting like the next year or two, and then we will be back.
Yeah.
Or we want to be back. And so, because like I grew up in Edmond, like Tulsa is the first time I ever moved away.
Yeah.
Like I never moved away. I grew up in Edmond, was born and raised there. So I was just like, yeah, of course we'll be back. Because like my heart was there and it felt tied there and like just naturally belonged there. And it just was so impossible to wrap my mind around building a new life somewhere else. Like I could not wrap my mind around that at all.
If you could go back and talk to Elizabeth in that 1 month time frame of being new to Tulsa, and it's on one of those days where you're really, as Jenny would say, stinking thinking.
Yeah.
And you're in your head about it, and you're like, I'm very depressed, I'm very sad, I have no one. What would you now say to Elizabeth then?
Hold on, I'm thinking. I've said this phrase with hindsight now, but I think I would still tell it to myself then. But like, I could never conjure up a plan this good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I could never dream up something this good.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I would tell myself, like, you have to trust that God's plans and timings are actually good because he's good.
Yeah.
And so if I know that he is good, then I know that whatever it is he has planned is also going to be good. Mm-hmm. And good in the sense of like everything you could ever ask, dream, imagine, like the best of the best, because it's in his will. It's what he wants. It's what he has laid out, like all of that. And so I just think I would tell myself, like, just wait. You could never conjure up something this good.
Yeah.
It's going to be great because you're walking in what he's asked you to do. Mm-hmm. And like, I feel like God honors obedience. And I think we've seen that over and over again. It was like from the moment we said yes in our driveway, every door flung wide open for us to be here. From selling our house to the security deposit for the house we're in now to like even being in the house we're in now. Our landlord prayed about us and said, hey, we feel like you guys should be in this house because we prayed about you guys and we have peace about you.
And he said, he legit told me point blank over the phone. He said, I wouldn't have picked you. But my wife and I, we believe in prayer. Yeah. And we prayed and we felt like God wanted us to pick you. And I remember sitting there. I was at the office in Oklahoma City, the insurance office. And I was thinking like, all right, yeah, this is for sure God's will. Like, for sure.
Yeah, it was like every door, like the second we said yes, which I'm not saying this like things weren't hard because obviously they have been at times. But it was like God, the second we said yes in our hearts and yes to the process, it was like God flung open every door that needed to be opened for us to be able to walk in obedience. Yeah. And so I think I would just like, I would look back and just tell that version of me, like, keep believing that he is good and his plans are good, because you're not even ready for what he has. Like you can't wrap your mind around how good it's going to get and how good it's going to be.
Yeah.
And I think that all the time, anytime God puts anything before us to like walk in obedience with, because I think with anything the Lord asks you to be obedient about, there is going to be some form of like, or some level of like sacrifice on our part, whether it's like comfort, just, or even just like your own desire. It feels like it might be going against what you would initially think is the better option or the better choice. But I just like time and time again, like that yes is worth it every single time, because he blesses it and he honors it. And you just get to see how good he is. I think we miss like the ability to see the fullness of how good he is when we like, it's like we cut him short by saying, nah, I think maybe what I want is a little bit better.
Yeah, or it's just uncomfortable.
It's uncomfortable. And
unfamiliar.
So you're cutting yourself short. You're missing the opportunity to like really let God show you just how good he is. Like you might not, I mean, life might still be fine. Had we said no, life probably would have been fine. But it wouldn't have been the fullness of what he had for us.
Exactly. So what changed? How did you go from I'm feeling depressed, I'm feeling alone, I have no one, to like being on the other side of it? What does that look like? Was there one moment? Was there one conversation, one interaction? Like what happened where you started to feel things shift?
I felt like for me it was kind of slow. Once we started visiting churches, that was great. But yeah, we kind of started visiting Woodlake and some other places, but then we kept coming back to Woodlake, and we eventually made the decision to make this our church home. And then pretty quickly got plugged into the internship here.
Yeah. And well, in between us joining, I went back and looked at our paperwork. We formally joined in April, which is crazy because
so that means we went through Woodlake Way in April.
Yeah, but we were getting plugged in little by little before that. But Woodlake Way, our table host was like Kendall, Rachel, and like Brad Burdett.
Yeah, I remember.
So it was like we had like all-star table hosts.
Yes.
But after that, and as the person who runs Woodlake Way now, like knowing what goes on behind the scenes, after we made the choice to actually formally join this church is when, in my memory, that's when everything like really, really got rolling. And we really started to make relationships like for real.
Yeah.
When we made that commitment. Yes,
because we just got plugged in.
Yeah.
Which I don't think we would have had made the friendships we have as easily had we not just thrown ourselves in.
Yeah.
Because we really did. It was like once we, committed, became members, we threw ourselves into serving. We were section hosts and prayer partners before we did anything else. And we threw ourselves into doing that whenever we were here. And, we came every Wednesday night, every Sunday. We did not miss unless, one of our kids got sick. And then we joined the internship, and we're the oldest interns that Woodlake has ever had.
Yep. Now there's an age limit.
Now there's an age limit because of us. It's fine.
Thanks, Brandon.
But because of that, we were spending time with people here more than we would have otherwise. So I think because of that, we started to slowly just, how you do. You gravitate towards certain people and you start to like just form friendships.
Yeah.
And for me, I felt like I kind of joke that I like forced myself into friendships because I just didn't. I was like, listen, in my mind, I was like, all these people, they've known each other for a long time. They already have friendships. They already have their people. So if I'm going to find a friend, I'm just gonna be their friend.
Yeah.
And they're either gonna deal with me or they're whatever.
So practically you're saying you made a decision to just talk to people.
Yeah, if I saw several girls that I'm like, oh, they could be a friend. If I saw them like talking in the lobby, I just walked right up to them, and I'd learned people's names at this point. But I just remember I would walk right up and just like join their conversations, and like eventually just started making friends that way. And I was like, listen, I'm gonna have friends.
Yeah.
I'm gonna make friends. They're gonna be my friends.
Yeah.
And thankfully, it worked out. I mean, it wasn't that aggressive, but
yeah.
I had to force myself because I was like, listen, connection is not going to happen with me just skulking around and doing nothing. Like I'm going to make connections with people.
And that's like knowing you. So your personality throws people off because you're a worship leader. You're an extrovert. You're always on the stage. You're always like around people. So from the outside looking in, and I remember what it was like before I ever knew you, and you were still this way at North. From the outside looking in, you have all the friends in the world. Mm-hmm. You don't lack any friends. You're never lonely. Everybody's always like talking to you. You're always talking to people. And you're not like, now that I know you as well as I do, you don't always just put yourself out there like that.
Yeah.
So that was actually a really big deal.
It was. And what you have to realize about North is I essentially grown up there. I was there for 15 years. Mm-hmm. So, when you're somewhere for 15 years, the majority of the people there, whether they're your closest friend or not. So it's really easy when at least 100 people, if not more, in a building to just...
like 400 or 500.
Yeah, to just walk around and be friendly and talk to people. And so like that... I see what you're saying. So from the outside, it's like, oh, yeah, look, she's just chit-chatting it up with everybody.
But for you to do that here at Woodlake, and I think this principle applies to anybody in a new setting like this, but you didn't say, and I'm sure you were uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah.
Like trying to talk to people you didn't know. And the tendency for people in a new church is to just go hide in the corner and like just hope everything just falls in your lap.
Yeah.
But you were going out of your way to talk to people, which I know you well enough to know that you don't really like putting yourself out like that or putting yourself out there like that.
Yeah.
All the time in an uncomfortable setting where you don't know people. But you did that. Though,
let me pause you for a second. I did that, but also Woodlake is literally the friendliest place in the world.
Yeah.
And so it was not that hard.
Yeah.
So while
and then throw in, oh my gosh, there's a new black guy here.
Wait, can we talk about Kaysen for a second?
So I've told this story a lot, and I shared it in the conversation I had with Ray on race and culture and all that. But I'm like 87% sure it was Kaysen.
I know, I remember it was Kaysen.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm like 99.9% sure.
So I'll never forget that because the very first moment through the door, that is the first thing I heard.
We were on our way to the gathering space and he was
we were going to kids because we needed to check the kids
right.
in.
I knew we were passing by the front doors. I couldn't remember
and we were walking through that crowd of youth.
And they were just kind of standing there talking.
And I'm pretty sure we saw that big sign on the wall that said kids, so we were walking that way.
Yes.
And I heard, oh my gosh, there's a new black guy here.
Yeah.
So, I mean.
But he shouted it. Oh my gosh, there's a new black guy.
So, it's that whole church thing of value diversity, make sure you talk to people of color, all those things. And there is something to that because Woodlake people are the friendliest people in the world anyway.
Right.
But as a person of color coming in and an interracial couple at that, people were going to talk to you.
Yeah.
But you still put yourself out there, which is important to take note of.
Yeah.
So that led to you actually making legit friendship.
Yes. And this was before I joined worship team and stuff too. I just had started trying as much as I could to get to know people and find familiar faces and make connections with people each time we were there, because I was like, I want to find my people. And if this is going to be our home church, I need to find my people.
Yeah.
Because you connected with Brandon pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And
it's that classic extrovert finds the introvert.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm glad he did, though. You have currently, and I've known you for a while, and I think it's safe to say in this season of life, you have some of the tightest friendships that you've ever had in your life.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Yeah, I think, okay, so something to think about too is I'm a stay-at-home mom. For the people that maybe don't know that, I'm a stay-at-home mom. So I don't really have anywhere to go during the day. So church was Woodlake was really my only opportunity to find connection, because I'm not really, wasn't plugged into anything else. Our kids weren't elementary school age or anything. So it's like, this was my shot twice a week, 2 hours a week, to try to find connection. And so I wanted to make every single opportunity, I just wanted to take those 2 hours. And obviously we're there for church and to worship and get in the word, but also to fellowship and have community. And so I made it my mission to just get plugged in. And I think I said this earlier, but we threw ourselves into being involved here in any capacity that we could. And so wherever I was serving, whether it was section host or prayer partner or eventually worship team, I was trying to find people that I felt like I could connect with, that I had things in common with, or I really, I thought they were funny, or I liked their personality, or, whatever. And so I think it was it's kind of the saying, take the bull by the horns, and making the most of my time here, the 2 times a week I was here that I could, to make those connections and be open to the people who are trying to connect with me, because it's not a one-sided thing, and it goes both ways. And so, yeah. And so anyways, it was just neat to see how God, again, open doors for friendship, open doors for really meaningful and deep friendships, not just for me, but for you and our kids. Our kids have really precious little friendships now. We have friendships that are other married couples, and it's just really precious. And so while I think some of it was, throwing ourselves in, getting involved, refusing to be alone, I think the other part of it, though, is just God had people here for us. And we just had to walk in the doors and be willing and be ready to connect with people, which, it's it takes some vulnerability and risk on your end to make connections with people that really matter, right? Because you don't want to just have these surface level friendships. I think as adults, it's really hard to make deep friendships because we have jobs and we have kids and we have all the responsibilities and every reason to not let ourselves have deeper connections. And so it takes some risk and vulnerability on our part to let people in and see you for who you are, and vice versa. And that takes time, and that takes energy, and that takes effort, and that takes intentionality. But I just think God knew exactly what we needed. And so it was just, once we got here, being I don't know.
What I'm hearing is that you didn't give up hope that God was actually doing something. Because I think there are a lot of people who, it's like one of those cases of you're always surrounded by people, but you don't have any meaningful relationships.
Right.
And I think in that, people give up a lot because they give up hope that it could actually happen.
Yeah.
And I think what you experienced, and it's just so crazy how we're like in the same household and had such different experiences, but what you experienced is a very valuable lesson in not giving up hope that God is going to work it out.
Yeah.
And you didn't give up in the middle of the process, because it is possible, and I would even say common, for people to give up in the middle of that process, and you're still going through the motions, but you're kind of like a shell of a person because you've given up hope and you don't have any of those meaningful relationships, and you don't believe that God will provide those for you. But he did.
Yeah.
And man, I just wish we could like get a glimpse somehow into like just how rich your friendships are.
Yeah.
And it is not, I just know what it's like to see you from the outside looking in, because I did it for a while before I asked for your number and asked for you to coffee. But it's easy to look at you on stage leading worship and just think like, oh, well, she's got everything. Like, she's got all the friends in the world and like all of that. And I don't think you have the relationships you do because you're a worship leader.
Right. Yeah.
You may have like one or two because you were on the worship team and you met people that way, or I don't know, maybe more. But it is not because of that.
Right.
At all.
Yeah. That's just like a common denominator.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's just a point of connection with some of my friends. But it goes so much deeper than that. Like I think that's just back to the whole like being willing to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And do life together. I think anytime I think about it, I just feel so like grateful, because I think I'm like, man, God, like you really knew what we needed, and you really did have it all like planned out.
Yeah.
Like it's that whole thing again of like, I never could have conjured up on my own something this good.
No.
Like it is only God that I have the friendships that I have now. Like it is only God.
Yeah.
Because I had some really beautiful friendships back home, don't get me wrong, but I've never had friendships quite like this that are practically family. Yeah. And I think God knew we needed that. I think he knew we needed family here that wasn't blood. Like that, because, you know, my parents are not here and my siblings are not here. And I think he knew that we were going to need friendships that were like going to be practically like family.
Yeah.
And I mean, like, that's exactly what I have now is like friendships that, like, I just love and adore and trust, and we all just, we just really value one another. And I feel like I've never had friendships quite this uplifting. I feel like our conversations are 99% of the time around what the Lord is doing.
Yeah.
Or if it's like, hey, please pray for my kid, or I'm frustrated, this is going on. And then we're all just like, okay, we're praying. Yeah. We're praying. And so I think that's the other thing is like these friendships are grounded in the Lord. And so like that just creates like sustainable and lasting relationships when it's grounded in the Lord. And you can't like beat that. Yeah. You can't beat that.